Okay, we're live. This is Relatives Fight CPS. The show is dedicated to helping people who are relatives trying to get children out of foster care. I'm attorney Vince Davis, and I'm joined by my co-host for this show, Georgette Truen. Good evening, Georgette. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Davis. I'm good.
Good. I think we're going to have some issues with sound again. And so we'll have that same rule. If I'm not talking, I'll mute. And if you're not talking, you'll mute. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Did you go ahead and contact our guest who's going to be with us this evening?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And we already have people from different platforms logging in. There's Stephanie Mims. Hi, Stephanie. And we have Geraldine Chavez. Hi, Geraldine. Geraldine says hello to you and to me. You folks who are watching on the different Facebook pages and on YouTube, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them as a comment, and we're going to try to answer those questions. Okay, is our guest named Monica Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to add her to the live stream right now. Monica Johnson, how are you?
Hello, good.
Monica.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Monica, because of technical issues we have with this streaming platform, if you're not talking, I'm going to ask you to put yourself on mute. And Georgette, the same thing. Like, you're not talking now, but you're not on mute.
I'm not actually familiar. I see the mute button. Now I do.
Okay, perfect. Monica, I'm going to ask you to tell the audience why you're with us this evening and who you are and what brought you here. Now, there's one rule we have, and that is we don't want to mention anybody's name, okay?
Okay.
So we don't use names, especially children's names and adults' names too. So go ahead and tell us who you are and how you're associated and why you're here tonight.
My name is Monica Johnston. I have been trying to fight for custody for my niece. I'm not sure what other question you had. I'm sorry.
Well, first tell us this. Where are you located?
I live in Washington.
Oh, the state of Washington, up there in the Northwest.
Yes.
And are you dealing with CPS up there?
Yes.
How long has your niece been in CPS custody?
Well, since birth, but she has been hospitalized for a good chunk of her life. And what the plan was, we had been having meetings and was for her to be placed at my home. I was to be trained by Children's Hospital because she has medical issues. So they were going to do the temporary placement with her and then have me do the training the day after they came to my home.
And what happened?
They came to my home or I should say, one of the caseworkers came to the house. I initially felt like she had already made up her mind before she even walked in the door. The very first conversation that she had was that she had felt that she sensed that I didn't want to have her placed with me and that I didn't want to share that with the group calls that we'd had. And I was literally I was speechless because I said, never have I ever said I didn't want my niece. I actually spoke with other people that were in that meeting because I felt like, did I give that impression to everybody? And the people that I spoke with said, we never got that impression. And then it turned to discussing about money, which I thought of all things, your niece is only going to get X amount of money. And I was like, stop right there. This has nothing to do with money. I don't care about money. I care for my niece and I care to have her with her siblings, and all of our family unit. I have a large family, very tight-knit family, and it broke my heart to say. We had a family discussion before, when we first knew that this was going to happen. We have my entire family, we sat down and had this discussion. Do we want to bring her into our family? And everybody was excited. We were so excited. When I have so many things to say. It's just trying to, but it was beyond disappointing in the end. But the way it all went through, so she went from room to room, which I figured that's what she was going to do. I didn't really think anything of that. There were a few things that I feel like now I've been made aware of. I actually looked up things because I didn't know what my rights were. I didn't know that if I had rights. I honestly, I felt like they had a precious child, and I was literally like at their beck and call. I would do anything to have her. And just to say I was disappointed. I was very upfront with the caseworker. Our house was actually in the midst of construction, and I told her, before you come, is this going to be an issue? And she said, no, as long as you have running water, there will be no issue. And it was cosmetic in the sense, I sell real estate, so I'm a realtor. So in the sense it was cosmetic, there was, the bathroom hadn't been painted, and the tub was fully working. I needed my flooring put in, and once the flooring was put in, then the vanity could be put in. Materials were there, so she knew it was happening. I told her I could even text her pictures the very next day. I never got a direct answer why they told me no. I had sent numerous emails to people and literally talk to this person. And when I would, they would say, you need to just file for the permanent place. And this is where my husband and I we literally were like, we need to think about everything, because there was so much. My husband has a big gun collection. I do not handle guns. My boys are hunters along with my husband. I had them go through hunter training. All of our guns were locked. She had requested that I open all of the gun safes. I opened them, and then at that point, she asked me to pull the guns out. And this is with my 4 children in the room, because this is a new person. They didn't know, and I was literally trembling because I don't handle guns. I don't like them. I never questioned whether they were loaded or unloaded, because I know my husband's smarter than that. But it was the fact that I was having to pull these out, and I told her, I'm not trained with these. I didn't know. I had no idea. And when I looked up what the rules were, it said that, actually I could read you the exact, was that they needed to be locked. Nowhere did I have to open the gun safe at all. Unless you could tell me different. Maybe I am wrong in that sense, but that was one thing that I was like, is that why? I was literally thinking to myself, like, what are the reasons why? We live on 5 acres. I have a hobby farm. We have 18 goats, 5 horses, 2 ponies, a donkey, numerous animals. And she told me that I would have to provide records from our veterinary for each one of our animals. And I was like thinking, like, what is going on? What is this? Why are they making it so difficult for us? And it was literally, I kept feeling like I was getting roadblock after roadblock. We were scheduled to have to get fingerprinted. In real estate, you have to have your fingerprints done. You have to have a federal background check. I had told them it was the exact same company, as a matter of fact. We scheduled our appointment. It was canceled, they said, the day before COVID. So it was literally been a trickle effect. When we went in to our next appointment after I had rescheduled that, they had told me that they could not actually see me. It was actually another business that was across the hall that said that the company was actually in violation because they had COVID protocol for the building, and that there was no way we were going to be able to get fingerprinted. But it's literally been roadblock after roadblock, and no answers. So just extreme frustration. It was so emotional for everybody. Every one of my children, it affected everybody.
Well, Monica, let me ask you this. How long has this case been open in the CPS court?
Since December.
2020?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know what stage of the case, where it's at with respect to the parents?
They're trying to establish paternity on the father. He just wants to sign his rights over. I know that's that part of it. As far as my sister, they have been trying to, I shouldn't say they have been. They have set it so she has to go to treatment. Otherwise, she just has, supervised visits. But at the same time, my sister had suffered a head injury. I don't think they ever have any intent to ever give the baby to my sister. That's why I was like, I have to fight for her. My sister had told them, let my sister adopt her. Just let my sister adopt her and we'll end all of this. And no answers from anybody. I actually sent the director from our area an email saying, we're at the point where, do I need to hire an attorney to help navigate the system? Because I'm not being heard, and I am a law-abiding citizen. My husband as well, my children, my older children. I said, talk to my doctor. I could reference people. It was just devastating.
Monica, I hope you have a pen and a piece of paper.
I actually do.
Okay, but you know what? I was just thinking something. This has been being recorded, so you can actually look at the recording on one of the social media platforms we're broadcasting to. But now, let me preface this by saying this. I'm a licensed attorney in California. I'm not a licensed attorney in Washington. Could I do a case in Washington? The answer is yes, through something called Pro Hoc Vice. I could get a request approval from the state of Washington, but I haven't requested that approval for your case. So I'm going to give you information as if your case was in California. Okay? Now, one of the things you're going to have to do is, number one, you're going to have to find an attorney that's experienced in this area of the law. All right. Now, I'm glad that you said what you said, but it's the mistake that most people make. And here's the mistake. I'm a good person. I don't have any criminal record. I have a fabulous home. I'm married, I have my own children, and the social worker will do the right thing by giving me this child, but I don't know why that's not happening. And I'm going to continue to pound my head against the wall and try to convince the social worker to give me the child. I have bad news for you. That's a really bad legal strategy. So if you expected the social worker to do justice, or what you believe justice to be, um, you're unfortunately barking up the wrong tree.
That's
Now,
how I felt. Yeah.
so you're going to ask, some people may ask me, well, why is that, Mr. Davis? Well, there's probably 1,000 reasons, okay, none of which we know. You see, I tell people in my office all the time, attorneys that work with me, everybody in a CPS case has their own agenda. And most of the time, that agenda doesn't match your agenda, because you're looking at this case from your perspective. And that's very dangerous. Many years ago, it's been over a decade, I went to something called the Trial Lawyers College up in Wyoming, run by a very famous attorney by the name of Jerry Spence. That's Jerry with a G. You can Google him. And one of the things that he taught us and taught me was, when you're doing a case, don't ever look at the case from your perspective. Don't ever look at the case from your client's perspective, because guess what? It doesn't count. Now, that may seem odd to you, but if you think about it for a moment, it makes a lot of sense, because you're not making the decision. Why would I be looking at the case from your perspective? How about looking at the case from the foster parent's perspective? They probably had this cute little baby, they can't have kids, and they want to adopt your niece or your nephew. Now, that's an interesting perspective, right? What if the foster parents have some type of personal, business, or financial relationship with the social worker? That's a what if. I'm a conspiracy theorist. What if they're foster parents that the social workers feel like they owe a favor to, because they've been there for so many years or months, helping social workers take care of kids when they needed to be taken care of? What if the foster parents are just great people and the social worker just loves them, and they have a foster license, which you don't have? They're a known quantity, you're an unknown quantity. Now, I'm here to tell you that the federal regulations and the laws in California, and I would bet in your state as well, promote and favor placement with children. Why it doesn't happen? Well, there's many reasons. There's 1,000 reasons this could happen. So do not sit back and think that somebody's going to do something and give you this child. You might as well just pack up, go away, and go on with your life. Now, here's an example I use all the time. Let's say the social worker comes into your house, goes into that back bedroom, into that closet back there, and finds your secret trapdoor where you have hidden $10 million. She takes the $10 million and walks out of your house. What are you going to do? You going to hope she's going to do the right thing and give you the $10 million back? No, you're not going to do that. You're going to go out and hire Johnny frickin' Cochran if he was still alive. Right? That's what you're going to do. You're going to get a lawyer. Now, why is it when people can't get children, and they know they should have these children in the family, why do they spend so much time talking to the social worker, trying to kiss the social worker's butt, trying to convince the social worker, and you don't even know what her agenda is or his agenda? Why are you trying to do that? Why don't you just go get an attorney that's experienced and have the attorney, him or her, deal with the situation. Why is that? I think it's because social workers are trained to perhaps maybe lead you on until it's too late. See, one of the things, Monica, you don't realize, the longer the child stays with that foster parent, the less likely you're going to get the child.
I do know that. My background, I worked for Superior Court for 10 years, and I was a clerk, and my job was interviewing for assigned counsel parents that would come in to get public defenders for cases like this. So I know they're going to say that she's bonded with her foster family. And my fight is, we're her blood. We love her. I unconditionally love her. Sorry. Were you telling me to stop?
Okay, now, Monica, here's the problem. And it even makes me a little bit more concerned about you that you know this more than anyone, and you haven't hired an attorney.
The
Monica,
people that I spoke with didn't even want to mess with CPS.
Okay, well, here's the thing. You know, there used to be a woman who used to co-host a lot of these different shows with me. Her name was Cynthia. And she used to tell people that she made so many phone calls. I think it was more than 50 phone calls to attorneys before she found me to help her with her case and get her children back. How many people have you called?
I called two that I personally knew of that I thought would actually be, from what I knew, good attorneys. And it was family law, and for this, they said that it was outside of their scope.
Right, because you don't need a family law attorney. You need a CPS attorney. You need something called juvenile dependency attorney. Okay, that's what you need. So it's like going to a heart doctor for brain surgery. They're both doctors, but they do something completely different. The example I usually use is going to the podiatrist for brain surgery. Podiatrist's not going to know how to do brain surgery, right?
Yeah.
And family law attorneys generally don't do CPS cases, don't want to do them. Okay, so you're going to have to find an attorney. Now, there are many ways that you can do it. There's Google, there's the Yellow Pages, but you're going to have to do a lot of calling and probably get a lot of rejection. But you're going to have to keep moving forward, right? Number two, if you were in California, you would want to file different petitions and motions with the court. The reason is because, you see, this is another one of my rules. If the social worker is not going to give you what you want, go over the social worker's head and go to the judge. The judge makes the final decision. Now, it's true the social worker does make recommendations to the judge, but the judge doesn't have to follow those recommendations. And most judges, unless there's something wrong with you, Monica, are going to probably favor giving the child to relatives. Because guess what? That's what the law actually says. You know, there are federal regulations from the Department of Health and Human Services about this. And they are very serious about those regulations. And they want to see, wherever possible, children being given to relatives. Now, you probably didn't even know what I just told you.
I didn't.
Right. So the social worker probably knows that. So if they don't give you the kid and the kid is, you know, adopted by the foster parent, Monica's not going to do anything. She doesn't know what to do. Very, very sophisticated, complex area of the law. And most people don't know, right? First of all, in a regular case, you know, A versus B, you really don't know the law, the rules of evidence, the rules of civil procedure. You don't know, but you kind of try to figure it out. This area of law is just, you know, oh my God, it doesn't make sense sometimes what the rules are. So you trying to figure it out, you're never going to win. Never. So you're going to have to find an attorney. If you're in California, you'd file a 388 petition. You file a JV 285 form. You'd file some type of motion for placement. Depending on what your relationship was like with the child before this case started, you might file a presumed parent status petition. There's a lot of things that you can file. And I bet that there are those things or similar things in your state. Look, from what you've told me, it's obvious that the social worker is not going to give you this child, all right? So, Monica, just accept that, all right? Now, and if you want to fight for this child, you're going to have to go see the judge. And to go see the judge, you're going to need an attorney. Does that make sense? Okay. So, that's what I think you should do. And you should do it immediately, because you remember what I said. One of the overlays on this whole case is the longer the child is with the foster parent, the less likely you're going to get the child.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I didn't make that rule. All right. I'm just the messenger.
Yeah.
But I hear it from people all over California. I hear it from people all over the country. It's just one of those things, that social workers use as an excuse, right? Just an excuse. Now, so that's what I think you should do. Right now, the case regarding the mother, is kind of secondary to your case. Well, you don't have a case yet because you haven't filed anything with the judge. But you got to get in front of the judge. You have the right paperwork, the right evidence, and you have to do it under the right procedure. You can't do that by yourself. I'm going to guess, even though you worked in the court system, you have no legal training.
No.
Right? I might as well ask you to change the transmission in my car. I bet you can't do that either. Neither can I. Someone told me I needed a new transmission a few months ago. Guess what I didn't do? I didn't run to Pet Boys, buy the Chilton book on, BMW transmissions. I didn't buy all the tools. I didn't buy all the supplies, right? Because me trying to change a transmission? No, I went to the dealership and I, said, okay, change the transmission and charge me a lot of money. Because I needed the car, right?
Yeah.
I get a lot of comments from the different pages that we have about it's very expensive to hire attorneys. And it is. Mainly because what you want done is a lot of work. People hire me all the time and they think I have a magic wand and I can just, whoo, and we get what Monica wants. It's not like that at all. Not like that at all. I was in a mediation today in a lawsuit against the county and some social workers. And the mediator told me, basically, it didn't sound like the case was going to settle because we not only was the number that we wanted too much, but the county wanted my client to pay them because they said, oh, we wrongfully sued them, right? Now, they can say anything they want, but basically, these people are not going to roll over and play dead. They're not going to do it for whatever reason. And if you try to figure this out yourself, you'll be frustrated for the rest of your life because it'll be stuff that you would never dream of. You don't know what's going through their mind. So don't even try to figure it out. Focus on your own case, get your own lawyer, go to court, present your evidence, and let the judge make the decision. I mean, if you used to work for the court and you have this great family and home and everything already, there's no legal reason why the child shouldn't be placed with you already.
Yes.
None.
Right.
Now, why the social?
That was why I wanted I wanted a reason. I wanted somebody to tell me why was she not allowed to be here.
No, do not focus on that.
Okay.
And here's why. Because they're probably going to lie to you. All right. Or they probably don't have a good reason. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
The only thing that matters is you don't have the child.
Yes.
That's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
So don't focus on that. See, if you
Okay.
focus on that, that means you're focusing on yourself. That means you're looking at the case from your perspective. What did I tell you earlier? Jerry Spence told me, do not look at the case from your perspective. That doesn't count.
Okay.
It might count here,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't count in the courtroom. You got to look at the case from the perspective of the other participants, especially the judge, the finder of fact. All right? And I'm sure that when you find an attorney, he or she will probably confirm that, the law in Washington is that relatives should have the kids. I mean, that's what the federal mandate is, right? And federal regulations and laws and money run this entire CPS system throughout the country. So, and by the way, if you go to the Department of Health and Human Services website, you can file a federal complaint, administrative complaint against your social worker, your state, and your county. And by the way, they take those complaints very seriously. And the reason is there's been such a increase in complaints from people all over the country about, stuff or shit like this happening. The other thing that you can do is you can also file a complaint with the federal Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, because probably the mother's rights, your rights, and the kid's rights are being violated by the social worker leaving the child with the foster family for no apparent reason. If they said to you, hey, Monica, 3 years ago you were convicted of drug sales or possession or, sexually or physically abusing a child. Okay, I can see the social worker saying, no, Monica, we're just not going to give you that kid. But if you're telling me basically, you have a clean record, clean home, nice family, you worked for the court system, okay, what's wrong with Monica? That she can't get the kid. And let me tell you what's not a good reason for the social worker at this point in time. Well, the foster family is such a good family. At this point in time, early in the case, that's not a good legal reason.
That's what she kept telling me, that the backup plan was a wonderful family that was a registered nurse, and it sounded like they didn't have kids. And I think at that moment, I just shut it out because I wasn't even thinking like that because
yeah. You know what? You know why? You're looking at the case from your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The cardinal rule, the mortal sin. Don't look at the case from your perspective. Okay. That's why, unfortunately, I see this a lot. You are personally involved in this case.
Yes.
Psychologically, emotionally, ego-wise. Like, why are they rejecting me? How dare they? That's why I say you're going to have to get an attorney who can handle the case professionally and objectively. Mm-hmm. And there are attorneys out there that can help you. You just have to find them. People tell me all the time, hey, Mr. Davis, I wish I would have known about you 2 years ago. And I just accidentally found you now. Because there's not a lot of gals and guys that do what I do. They're just not. Mm-hmm. If you had gotten arrested for a DUI, there's a lot of guys and gals that do that. Yeah. If you were getting divorced, a lot of guys and gals do that. Somebody ran into the back of you at an intersection. A lot of guys and gals do that. Doing a CPS case, not a lot of guys and gals. I live and work in Los Angeles County, probably the biggest or the second biggest CPS mecca in the United States. I probably could safely say that I know 90 to 95% of the private lawyers that work in this area. And I'm just one guy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what does that mean? That means, well, there's not a lot of guys and gals that do this. And I can only imagine if people have a hard time finding me in Southern California, you trying to find somebody like me in Washington, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be virtually not impossible, but it's going to be very, very difficult. Very difficult. We get calls all the time from people saying, hey, do you know anybody in Washington? And say, for example, this is not your city, I'm just guessing. You know anybody in SeaTac that knows, does CPS cases? You know what my answer is? No. Only been to Seattle once myself. And all I remember is the coffee shops. I don't know any CPS attorneys. We're in the verge of starting something called the CPS Attorney Rolodex.com. And we're trying to get attorneys from all over the country who do CPS cases to register there so that people like you can go there and find them.
Mm-hmm.
And look at their website and look at their, videos on YouTube and look at their, and contact them by email, asking them questions. Sometimes we have another show. We haven't done it in a while. It's called Ask the Experts. And that's where I have attorneys from all over the country, come on and we chit chat about CPS cases in their state, and then people like you or like the people watching now can learn about them. And if they have a state and have a case in like Texas, they can call this guy. The last guest that we had was an attorney from Texas, and I still keep in contact with him, but you would be shocked at the number of people that saw him on the show and that have called him that live in Texas
Mm-hmm.
and asked him for help. It was phenomenal. I don't go to Texas every day. And if I did, it'd be so expensive, because Texas ain't around the block from me. Got to get a car, got to pay for parking at the airport. I got to fly. I got to get a hotel. I got to get an Uber, got to pay for my meals, and then I got to do the return trip and Uber and the parking at the airport. It's expensive. So if you can find a person in your jurisdiction that can help you and that's qualified, that's what you should do.
Okay.
So I'm going to wrap this up, and this is what I'm going to tell you, Monica. Stop hoping that the social worker will do the right thing. You need to go on the offensive with an attorney. Okay. Now, if you're willing to do that, I think that you're going to have if everything that you've told me is true, I think you're going to have a good shot. I think you have a good shot. It's either that or, you know what, Monica? Pack your bags and just walk away and go on with your life. But don't try to do it yourself, because you're just going to be the frustrated person. You are looking for answers that you're never going to get.
Mm-hmm.
These are confidential cases. They don't have to tell you nothing.
That's absolutely right.
So, are there any questions you want to ask me or Georgette?
I don't think so. I think we clear. Do you know the animal thing? Is that true?
Look, as I said, I'm not licensed in Washington, but there are rural areas here in California where I've done cases and people have had animals and stuff. I've never heard of that ever. The worst thing that I've heard of is you have a pool and they want you to have a fence around it so the kid doesn't get in the pool and drown. But animals? You got to be kidding me.
The other thing that she said was that when they came back, that they would have to interview each one of my children individually, which I didn't understand why they would have to do that.
That I can see them doing.
Oh, okay.
To evaluate you. Do you beat your kids? Do you do this to your kids?
Oh, okay. I
You and
get
your
it now. Okay. Yeah,
Do
that
you
makes
and your
sense.
husband have domestic violence? They're
Okay.
checking you out, right?
Okay.
Who better to ask than your kids?
Yeah, that makes sense.
How do you punish them? Is it physical? Is it, taking away things? Georgette, I see you waving your finger. Did you want to say something?
Question. Can they interview the kids without the parents present?
Well, if you were in California, the answer is yes. If you don't let them, technically, if they were Monica's kids, Monica could stop it, but it would be a reason to deny her the kids in the future, or to deny placement of the kid that she's trying to get. They would use it as a reason. So, if you were in California, I'd probably tell you, go ahead and, prepare your kids to be interviewed. But, I'd probably say if you want to interview them, that's okay, but I want the interview recorded. Because what's going to happen, because I've seen this scenario before, and I'm the social worker, and I say, oh, I talked to Monica's 7-year-old, and the 7-year-old said that mommy and daddy fight every night, and that daddy whips me with a belt, every week. So then they turn the case on you, right? Allegedly claiming what your 7-year-old said, when your 7-year-old didn't say anything. But you go to court, who's the judge going to believe? Social worker or 7-year-old who Monica got to after the interview? See how that works?
Yes. So who is the police for CPS? Is that just the federal court? Is that basically?
In California, there is no police for the CPS. There's none.
Wow.
The only thing that you can do is after the case is over, or even during the case, you can sue them for violating your rights, for lying on you. Okay? But, when you sue a social worker, guess who pays for the social worker's attorney? Guess who pays if the social worker loses? The county and the state, not the social worker. So they really have no personal ramifications. There's a very famous case that came out of the state of Washington in the late 80s. I think it was like 1989. Up until that point, you could sue a social worker for general negligence. And Washington passed a law because they were paying out so much money for social worker screw-ups, and they gave social workers what's called qualified immunity to make it, just a little bit harder for you to sue a social worker. And the case went up to the United States Supreme Court because people were saying, well, that's unconstitutional to give social workers immunity because they really have nobody to answer to. Well, the Supreme Court of the United States at that time voted 5-4 that it was constitutional. You could give social workers immunity, qualified immunity. So guess what? Every state in the country did the same thing. So, when you say who's the social worker police, there isn't really. The thing that most comes closest to it is the federal complaints with DHHS and the Justice Department, the Civil Rights Division. I don't even tell people to, make a complaint in that county, because if you have county social workers, I don't think I've ever seen a county government, take the side of the parent and discipline the social worker. And I've been involved in some crazy cases. Actually, I take that back. There was one social worker that did get fired. One in my almost 35 years of practice. I only know of one case. And that was such an egregious case. My client, before she became my client, believed that the social worker was taking the father's side because they were having an extramarital sexual relationship. And she you know, went to the motel, followed them to the motel, and she videotaped it. I think either they were coming in or going out of the motel room. And when they realized what my client had done, the social worker went and got a restraining order against my client, saying that my client threatened her, was stalking her. Now, think about that for a second, the audacity of that. Here you are taking the father's side against me in a CPS case, because what the social worker, maybe she knew this, or maybe she didn't, the guy was paying my client, I think, $1,500 a month in child support. So to stop that child support, he made allegations against my client, the mother, got the kid placed with him, and he gave the kid to his mother to raise and take care of. But he didn't have to pay the $1,500 in child support. So that social worker ended up getting fired. But I believe that the only reason why the social worker got fired is because my client had videotape of her coming out of the motel with the father. Now, she had been alleging that they were having an affair, but nobody believed her. She didn't have any evidence. When she first told me about it, I'm like, are you serious? And I'm thinking to myself, maybe this lady's a little crazy. But she had it on videotape. Everybody now has one of these, right? It records, it video records. Now, I'm not telling you that you should be using that, but people do use it. And there's some laws, and like in California, you can't record anybody, audio record them without their knowledge, right? I don't know what the law is in Washington. But, when you say who's the police, it's the federal government. You have to go to the right agency and file the right complaint, and cross your fingers and hope that they will do something to investigate. I have a case up in Northern California. I won't say the county right now, where my client did make complaints, and they are being investigated. And someone actually from that county called me and asked me about civil rights violations, and did I think civil rights had been violated. So the only reason why I got that call from a county employee was because the federal government had contacted them and said, hey, we have a complaint for, civil rights violations, for possible discrimination. And so it's being investigated, and there are severe, stiff penalties if the federal government comes down against the social worker. And they're generally monetary. But you're talking about millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. So people in the county, the higher-ups, are not interested in losing that kind of money because some social worker is sleeping with a father and giving him an advantage in the the CPS courtroom. So that lady was fired. But that's why I say you should consider making those, making those complaints. This isn't an easy process. And, I don't know, maybe you feel differently now, but I bet you thought this was going to be an easy, straightforward thing when you started, and it hasn't been. It's not going to be. Okay? Monica, did you have any other questions for me?
I think that's it.
Georgette, did you want to say anything?
Yes. Why, when social workers enter like the grandparents' homes or an aunt or an uncle, they don't have a list of what their rights are when they come to their home? Shouldn't they have a list of what their rights are?
That's actually a very good question, Georgette. I think they should have a list, but I'm not aware of any list, at least in California, that requires the social worker to do anything like that. Because, for example, Monica is just an aunt. She's not a parent. Theoretically, her rights aren't being impinged upon. Because the case is really about the child and about the parents. But when you think about it, and why I say it's a good question is, you're now talking about Monica's rights, and you're now talking about the child's rights. And say the child is a baby, right? The child, you can't ask the child, hey, don't you want to be with your Aunt Monica? It's too young. But maybe 10 years from now, 18 years from now, the child might say, well, wait a minute. Why wasn't I put with my family? Right? Now, I'm not saying that the foster parents are bad people. I mean, generally in these cases, they're great people. They're a great family. That's why the social worker wants to keep the kid there. But in my mind, that doesn't trump family. I say this, Jesus, almost every show, no matter what show I'm doing. The Supreme Court of the United States says family is the fabric of our society. It counts for something, and in my mind, it counts for a lot. Okay? Did you have something else you wanted to say, Georgette?
Yes. So I had a grandmother that asked me, well, she shared with me today that a social worker told her she has to get a foster license in order for her to keep her grandchildren. The social worker made her get a foster license to place her grandkids with her, and she told her she is not allowed to call them her grandkids, that these are her foster kids. In California, by the way.
So what's the question?
The question is, can they do that? Can they make you become a foster parent if you are a grandmother, relative, anybody in the family?
Okay. Now, you've asked me a couple of questions, and your questions are always, can they do that?
Are they allowed to do that?
The answer is yes. They are allowed to do anything they want, because there's no prohibition that says, or law that says, they can't do it. Because I don't think anybody ever imagined how perverse or how social workers would turn these cases and laws on their head. No one ever imagined that. So the answer is, social worker can do anything she wants. That's not the right question, though. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Now, I want to tell you something. I want you to imagine a wall, and it has 5 doors on it. Each door leads you to the other side, which is having the child placed with you. But you just have to get in one of the doors. You don't have to get in all 5. All right? Now, if the social worker just tells you about door number 1, that's all you know. And sometimes the social worker in California will tell you, well, you have to go and become RFA approved. You have to become a foster parent. Well, that's one of the ways you can get the child. It just happens to be the hardest way, the longest way, and it's not, the other 4 doors. Social worker never mentions those 4 doors to you. So, yeah, they can do that. The right question is, what are the different ways I can get my grandchild? Is foster care the only way? Well, no. But if I don't tell you, if I'm a social worker and I don't tell the grandparent that, grandparent doesn't know anything. They only know what I tell them as the social worker. So it's really the way you ask that question. You can see what I'm saying, I hope. It's not the right question. A lot of people call and ask me questions all the time. And I go, I'm going to answer that, but then I'm going to tell you something. You're asking me the wrong question. Well, Mr. Davis, I thought blah, 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 blah. I tell people this all the time, and it gets some people pissed off. I go, look, Georgette, you're calling me today because you want me to do blank. Fill in the blank. Well, Mr. Davis, let me tell you this story. No, 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 no. Don't tell me the story yet. I'll listen to the story. Tell me what you want. Well, I don't know what I want. Yes, you do, because you wouldn't have called me. Well, I don't know if I can get what I want. That I believe. You just tell me what you want, and I'll figure a way to tell you what you need to do to get it. Okay? So that's the most important question, especially, Georgette, when you're talking to these relatives. Well, what do you want? Well, what do you think I want? I want the kid. Perfect. Okay? But I want to tell you the story, this tragedy, because a lot of people, they need to tell someone. And when they call you or call me, they need to tell the story. But I hate to sound like a lawyer. A lot of times that story isn't the most important thing. It can become important, but the most important thing is, what do you want? Georgette, what do you want from me? What do you want me to do? Well, I don't know, Mr. Dick. Yes, you do. You know what you want. That's why you called me. It takes effort to push those 7 buttons or those 10 buttons to call me. It takes effort to say to some strange lady who answers my phone, hey, I have a problem. I need to talk to someone. That takes a lot of courage. I believe after almost 35 years of practice that most people who have these types of problems in any area of the law, but especially this area, don't call a lawyer. It's too hard. It's too difficult. First, you got to find the damn lawyer in the phone book or on Google, right? How do you do that? Like, how do you find a guy named Vince or a guy like Vince Davis? How do you find that? Then once they do find you, the lawyer, they got to dial a number and talk to some strange lady or man about this tragedy in their life, in their family. I don't know about you, Georgette, but I'm pretty, I like to keep things about my private life confidential, about my family life confidential. Like, how do I explain to people? They probably don't even care, but this is what goes through your mind. How do I explain to people that my sister is a freaking drug addict and has lost their kid? And then in the same breath say, well, I come from a good family. How do you say that to someone and feel comfortable about it? The people that call me out of desperation and as a last resort. I mean, take Monica, for example. Monica's been trying to work with the social workers all this time, not knowing that she's never going to get any traction. I shouldn't say never. It's unlikely she's going to get any traction with the social worker. Social worker may see this on YouTube or Facebook tonight and say, uh-oh, I recognize Monica. I better change my tune. All right? So how do you do that? You see, so it's hard for these people to even call me. Most people won't call me. And social workers are right. Most people aren't going to do anything. They're just going to take the shot in the gut and lose the kid to some family, to some foster home, and pray that the kid will have a good life. And that God will, this is God's will and things will work out. I hear that all the time from people all over the country. So, I mean, Monica, I don't know this. We didn't talk before today's show, but for you to come on and tell your story, I know that was difficult. I know. People don't like to get on, put themselves, on the internet and talk about their dirty laundry. People tell me all the time, in the different shows that we have, they want to come on, and then at the last minute, they cancel. For many different reasons. Most of it is fear, and I understand it. Believe me, I do. I understand it. But when you do get to that final point and you do reach out for help from a lawyer, you got to find the right lawyer. You got to take the steps. You got to move quickly. I talk to a lot of people all the time. Oh, Mr. Davis, we don't need to hire you. This is all going to work out. I can't tell you how many calls I get months later. Oh, Mr. Davis, you were right. Can you believe the social worker screwed me like that? Can you believe the social worker lied to me? I get those calls a lot. We even get those calls on the radio show. I'm just calling and give you an update, Mr. Davis. I didn't listen to you, and I should have done what you suggested. Because people honestly believe in their government. People honestly believe in their government officials like social workers that are going to do the right thing. The problem is the social worker's right thing is something different from what you believe is the right thing. So the social worker's doing the right thing. That's what she thinks. So, who's right? Who's wrong? That's why I say you got to get an attorney. You got to go to court. You got to put it in front of the judge's eyes and ears and, right there in his or her face so that the judge can make the decision. Because obviously, after all this time, people like you, Monica, social worker is not going to make the decision you think is right. Okay? So if you have any other questions or anybody out there this evening have any questions, please give us a call, 888-888-6582. Ask for me or ask for Georgette. Georgette helps me and works with me, and hopefully we can give you set up an appointment or give you some type of information that will assist you. Also, I have a resource. It's a free resource. It's my YouTube channel, Vincent W. Davis Trial Lawyer, and I have probably 400 videos on there where I'm actually answering questions of people calling into my radio show. So go to YouTube and check me out. Check out my videos. On Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I do a Facebook live stream to YouTube and to different Facebook pages, just giving out information like this. And tomorrow's Facebook platform is, what is it? Oh, it's how to sue the social worker. Got a lot of requests for that one.
Yeah.
A lot of requests for that one.
That's going to be good one, Vince. Very good.
So we did the first show last week. You can find it on whatever platform you're watching and look at the rerun. It's only an hour show, but we're going to be going through everything about how to sue the social workers. Because, a lot of people I talk to, in my humble opinion, have civil rights cases. Their rights have been violated by the social worker. So that comes on tomorrow night at 7. And then on Saturdays, we have our flagship program, which is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. It's a 3-hour show on the ABC affiliate radio station in Los Angeles, KABC. 790 AM talk radio, and it's also live streamed at the Facebook page, The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. So if you're in the area, listen to us on the radio, or you can go to kabc.com and listen to the simulcast at the website for the American Broadcasting Company, or you can go to Facebook and watch the video version of the show, which is simulcast on live stream. The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. Okay? Listen, Monica, I want to thank you for coming on. You were very brave, and I appreciate it, because a lot of people, even from, comments and emails that I'm getting and posts that I'm getting on the different platforms tonight, have the same problem you have. You're going through the same exact thing. Get a lot of uncles, get a lot of aunties that call, and a lot of grandparents. You know, I don't know what's the deal is with grandparents, and they won't give these kids to grandparents. I was raised by my grandmother, so I kind of have a soft heart for grandparents trying to raise their grandchildren. But, you know, all we can do is keep taking a step forward every day and trying to do the right thing and trying to prevail, trying to get these children with families. Okay, so thank you again, Monica. Georgia, I want to thank you again for assisting me and helping me direct and produce this show. You may not realize this, but there's a lot of prep and work that goes on in preparing for this 1 hour show. And Georgette helps me do that along with our executive producer, Judy. All right. Well, folks, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow night on Facebook Live, How to Sue Social Workers. And that, by the way, that show is going to be taking a class format. And we're going to try to teach you something new every week about bringing a civil rights lawsuit in case you believe you have one. All right, so we'll see you guys tomorrow, and if not, and in addition, on Saturday on the radio show. Good night.
Bye, Monica.